One of the biggest glaring weaknesses that I see in training programs today is metabolic conditioning. For the soccer athlete, metabolic conditioning is one of the most crucial aspects of the game and most crucial aspects of sports performance because soccer is such a physically, metabolically, and biomechanically demanding game. All of the sprints, the change of directions, the active recovery, the short periods of rest in between make soccer a very challenging sport to program for. And this is one of the areas that I see in fitness packets, in particular, collegiate fitness packets, that is a glaring weakness. Strength conditioning coaches in the college sector are still programming long distance runs, mileage, track workouts, interval breakdowns. A lot of these methods are inapplicable to soccer, but also outdated methods. They may not be targeting the metabolic systems necessary to make a more fit and robust soccer athlete. Today, we're going to be talking about metabolic conditioning for soccer, the must-haves in your training program. Before we get started with the must-haves, before we get started with the things that we actually see in a week's worth of training at TKO, I'm going to start with why metabolic conditioning is so important for soccer. Soccer is one of the most physically demanding sports in the world, not just in the duration of time that you have to create energy to perform all of the different actions in the sport, but also the intensity of the game at every level lends itself to a really difficult challenge for strength conditioning coaches and for athletes to get fit. So why is metabolic conditioning so important for a sport like soccer? Firstly, soccer is not necessarily a unique sport from an energy system standpoint. There are many sports that look like it. However, the structure of training for it is unique in a sense that there's a lot of qualities that need to be touched in a conditioning program in order to make it effective for an athlete, particularly one who competes at an elite or a really high level. So with soccer, a couple of things that we see that are key and specific to soccer. Soccer is an intermittent sprint sport or a repeated sprint ability sport, meaning that you have tons and tons or dozens and dozens of high intensity accelerations and decelerations mixed with short periods of rest. The rest is also unique in a sense that the rest in soccer is typically active. There's walking and jogging, and athletes have to stay moving during their rest periods in order to cover more ground on the pitch. So this lends itself to a unique challenge because soccer players not only cover a ton of distance, but a large portion of that distance is covered at a high intensity. So with that being said, we know that sprinting is going to be a significant and important aspect of the training program that can't be overlooked, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The other thing that makes soccer a really unique and difficult sport is the frequent change of direction. Agility and traditional change of direction stuff is going to be important to put into the program because athletes have to be not just metabolically fit to change direction that many times in a match, but they also have to be biomechanically fit. Their muscles, tendons, and skeleton have to be ready to be able to absorb and redirect all those forces throughout the course of 90 minutes. You can't just be fit enough to change direction hard once, twice, 10 times. You have to be able to do it 50 to 75, up to 100 times in a match. And that's extremely taxing and important to consider when we're writing a metabolic conditioning program. The last unique aspect of soccer is the minimal recovery times or the incomplete recovery times in between sprints. So typically in soccer, a general work to rest ratio might look like 4 to 6 seconds of extremely hard activity, high intensity sprint and change of direction type activity, accelerations and decelerations. But this is dispersed between maybe 20 to 25 seconds of active recovery in the form of walking and jogging. So even though work to rest ratios aren't the only thing to consider when we're making a training program or a strength conditioning program that improves our fitness, it is generally important to remember that 4 to 6 seconds of work interspersed with 20 to 25 seconds of active recovery is more indicative to soccer than longer runs or the work to rest ratios that you see in typical interval breakdowns like 2 minutes of work followed by 1 minute of rest. Hey, that doesn't look like soccer. Now, it's important to note that not all the intervals and not all of the metabolic conditioning that we do has to take on the same work to rest ratio as the game of soccer. Matter of fact, in order for us to build general physical qualities like aerobic fitness, VO2 max, and say repeat sprint ability, we may be using types of drills and work to rest ratios that are totally different than soccer, but we have to be strategic in how we do it. Okay, so let's talk about our must-have training method number 1 for building metabolic conditioning for elite fitness in soccer. The first thing and the most important thing, the foundation of aerobic fitness in our program at TKO is tempo runs. Now, tempo runs might seem extra simple, but tempo runs are so versatile that I love them for every single type of soccer player, every position, and even other type of field sport that comes through our program. Tempo runs are extremely important because they serve as the aerobic base they're extremely important because we perform these on low days in our training program, because athletes are running fast enough to be able to help improve speed qualities and their metabolic conditioning, but they're also slow enough to be able to allow sufficient volume to get fit. You can do enough of them to get fit, but also they don't fatigue the athlete too much from a muscular standpoint that they can't train hard the next day or a couple days later. Another aspect of tempo runs that's important is the abbreviated recovery. Essentially what a tempo run is a stride that looks like sprinting technique, but it's done at a speed that's easily recoverable. So an example of this might be like if we did full intensity sprints out to 30 meters or 40 meters, we might do tempo runs out to 60 or 75 meters, but we'll do them at a much lower intensity or lower speed than we would do those full sprints. So we can rehearse proper sprinting technique, which is valuable for the speed endurance aspects of soccer, but we're able to do more of them so we can get more coordination practice. The other reason why I like tempo runs for building an aerobic foundation with soccer players is because they're very versatile in the intensity in which we can run. I can tell a soccer player exactly how fast to run during these tempo runs in order to elicit a specific adaptation. So for example, if we're running out to 50 meters, I might say, I want you to run this 50-meter tempo run in 10 seconds, which is 5 meters per second, which is going to be the high-speed running metric in most college soccer programs. So with this, we can rack up high-speed distances over a very short amount of time and expose the athlete to volumes that they're going to experience in heavy practices and also in competitions. So it's extremely versatile training method. A couple of examples of tempo runs might be 2 sets of 5 100-meter tempo runs run at 20 to 21 seconds mixed with 40 seconds of recovery. So we might do these on the minute, for example. So every minute you're going to start a new tempo run, finish the repetition in 20 to 21 seconds, and then you have the remainder of the minute to rest. Now notice that's a 1 to 2 work to rest ratio, meaning you get double the rest as you do in the work period. That's totally fine. Like I said before, it may not look like soccer. The work to rest ratio may not look like soccer, but the abbreviated work to rest ratio is going to help us build up a lactate tolerance so that when we get into a match and we're forced to repeat sprints with minimal recovery in between, we can handle that fatigue. Lastly, tempo runs help us teach sprinting rhythm and efficiency while under fatigue. So like I said before, we can rehearse those proper sprint mechanics without accumulating too much fatigue that our technique breaks down significantly. So they're an excellent coordination drill for longer sprints that we're going to do in other parts of the program. Extremely versatile training method. Give it a try. I recommend 50-meter tempo runs or 100-meter tempo runs at a 1 to 2 work to rest ratio. So in a typical workout, we might do 500 to 750 meters of tempo running to start, and then we'll slowly accumulate tempo running volume over the course of, say, 6 to 8 weeks so that we can build up to a competition load worth of high-speed running at the end of that, which might look like over the course of the week, it might look like a game load being, 1,000 to 1,250 meters of high-speed running. We might do double that in an entire week of training. And with that, the athlete will be plenty prepared for heavy practices and competitions when they show up to training camp or they get started with their club season. Okay, so must-have metabolic conditioning piece number 2 for all soccer training programs is going to be maximal effort sprints. Yes, sprints may not seem like it, but they are metabolic conditioning. Sprints are arguably the most effective way to improve the nervous system's ability to be able to achieve really high intensities. But also, like we mentioned before, soccer is a repeat sprint ability sport. So with that being said, sprinting is going to be the most valuable movement pattern in the sport. Okay? Athletes who can get to balls first, get to tackles first, get on the end of things first, make the extra run, beat out the defender, they're going to be more valuable because they're going to be able to use their fitness to be able to make an impact, a tangible impact in competitions. Faster athletes win more in competitions, essentially. Now, sprints are so valuable because they train the nervous system to fire at a higher rate, and the nervous system is extremely energy hungry. So if we have a strong aerobic foundation with tempo runs, for example, or with just a large volume of training overall, that includes soccer, if we have a good aerobic foundation, then we have the ability to stack on top of that a high level of nervous system outputs that allow us to repeat sprints at a high intensity throughout competitions. So I like to think of this as a house, right? And if our aerobic systems built by tempo runs, VO2 max training, large volumes of soccer, et cetera, are the foundation, then sprinting is going to be the ceiling or the roof on that house. So if you think about a house with many many stories. Okay, what we're trying to do is instead of just have a house with one story, we're trying to create an apartment building with tons of floors. Okay, because if we have tons of floors in the apartment building, then we can put more stuff in it. We can put more rooms in it. We can put more people in it. Okay. So sprinting is the same thing, is that it helps us raise the ceiling on our physical capabilities so that we can put more physical capabilities. We can train more physical capabilities inside of that house. Okay. It's things like strength, things like change of direction and agility, things like technical skills. It affords us more coordination and a higher ability to learn skills. So the nervous system and the metabolic systems are intimately connected right here. Because soccer is a repeated sprint ability sport, we need the aerobic foundation to be able to repeat sprints many times throughout the competition. So max effort sprints allow us to work our nervous system up to an extremely high level and move our limbs really fast. And then our aerobic system allows us to repeat that ability over the course of the game. So those two work together symbiotically, but you need both. You need nervous system training and you need heart and lung training in the form of aerobics like tempo runs, like we talked about before. So this is kind of the yin and yang of metabolic conditioning when it comes to soccer right here. You need the really high neuromuscular recruitment that comes with sprinting, or the high intensity anaerobic stuff. And then on the opposite end, you need the aerobic development that's going to help build things like heart strength and size, our ability to pump oxygen to working muscles, improving our VO2 max, and then of course just generally getting more time and volume on our legs so we can handle the massive training loads of our in-season competition period. Okay, so an example of how we can use max effort sprints to improve metabolic conditioning. We do a lot of accelerations and we do a lot of maximal effort sprints out to about 40 or 50 meters. Okay, so we use both of those in the program. We try to sprint at least twice per week, and we do these on our high nervous system days because we're ramping the nervous system up to a really high intensity, a really high level, so that we can challenge our coordination, the forces that our muscles can handle, and our ability to blend skills with metabolic conditioning. So an example workout for this might look like 6 10-meter sprints, focusing on acceleration power, 3 20-meter sprints, moving that acceleration out a little bit longer, and then 3 30-meter sprints at maximal effort with full recovery in between. After this, we can do things like resisted sprinting or sled toe accelerations so that we can work on training the specific aspects of speed that are going to improve that quality. But just a reminder that even though we're training speed and we're resting a lot in between, doesn't mean that we're not doing metabolic conditioning at the same time. Right? So add both into your training program and you'll see powerful results. Okay, so let's move on to must-have number 3 for a complete metabolic conditioning program for soccer. So this aspect of the training program is what I call repeat sprint ability drills. Now, these are unique in a sense that repeat sprint ability drills are going to include and mimic movement patterns in the sport of soccer that are designed to replicate match demands. So this might look like reactive agility. This might look like high-speed change of direction or decelerations. This might look like chasing and reacting to a ball or a partner, or it might look like small-sided games or chaotic environments in which a player is going to be asked to change direction in tight spaces. So these repeat sprintability drills are extremely important because they incorporate the mechanical demand of change of direction, but they also replicate the chaotic nature of the sport. The other thing that they replicate is they are designed to challenge our ability to recover quickly in between high-intensity bouts of work, which is one of the most important aspects of soccer. These are advanced drills here. So we notice that we have the aerobic foundation built with tempo runs. We have the high speed stuff, the high neuromuscular coordination stuff built with maximal effort sprinting. And then we try and tie those things together with repeat sprint ability drills that are open and chaotic in nature. So there's a level of competition and reactivity to the drills that make it more like that real match environment. So an example of this might be a 5-second work period with a 20 to 25-second active rest period. And we have one rabbit and we have one dog. I call this the rabbit drill. So you have one person chasing and you have one person being chased. And you essentially play a game of tag in which one individual, one player, is going to run around as fast as they can and change direction and try and lose the other person in a span of 5 seconds. And the other person is going to either try and catch them or stay as close as possible to them so that they can almost touch their hip, and requires them to react in really tight spaces and do lots of change of direction and match style movement patterns in a very short amount of time. So it's requiring a high intensity. Then they They use active recovery in between, jog, walk, whatever we decide, and then they repeat that for several repetitions so that they can incorporate the high intensity stuff that we've been working on with the sprinting and the ability to buffer fatigue in between those high intensity bouts of work. So some other examples of how we can use this alone, I like to use shuttle runs. Shuttle runs are an excellent way to challenge the high intensity change of direction or deceleration component of soccer. Mirror drills, if we have partners, you have 2 athletes in a training session or 3 or 4 athletes in a training session. The rabbit drill is an excellent way to do this. Or you can use simple linear sprint techniques like repeated sprints in which an athlete is going to sprint as fast as they can in a straight line. They get up time and then they're going to jog or walk back and use an abbreviated recovery and try and maintain that time for as many repetitions as possible. If you have a timing gate or if you have an ability to time sprints, this is a really good way to monitor fatigue and give them the appropriate amount of rest when their performance starts to drop off. Okay, so there you have 3 methods for effective and appropriate conditioning that's matched to the game of soccer. We have tempo runs for aerobic development. We have maximal effort sprinting to develop neuromuscular coordination at the highest intensities and at the highest levels. And then you have the blend of those two together. We have repeated sprint ability drills with change of direction component. So remember, combining all 3 of these types of methods in a training program is going to be much more effective than long distance runs. It's going to be much more effective than random breakdown intervals or intervals on the track. It's going to be much more effective than doing cardio or energy system development on machines that don't translate over to the sport of soccer, the chaotic and high intensity nature of the sport. So if you're a coach or a player or a parent looking to upgrade your metabolic conditioning for soccer players, hit like, subscribe to our page, maybe drop a comment or a question down below. And then if you want more information, you can book a discovery call with the link in our bio.